were, and then also to talk about maybe what what their military service, how it influenced and shaped their life after service. So um, I think
Hey,
it's
Dennis, if
yes,
if you want me to talk today, I can do that.
that would be fabulous. That would be great. I
And
really
then that way it gives you more time to find somebody for December.
right. Super, 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 super. Appreciate that, Gordon. All right, so we're going to spend the next 10 or 15 minutes just kind of introducing ourselves to each other. There's a number of familiar faces here. Bob, why don't you start? You talked a little bit before we had several folks join us. Just kind of briefly talk about who you are, where you are, um, what your military time was, and what you're
Thank
doing.
you. I appreciate that.
Hmm.
So I my draft number was 52. So rather than and I was choice, as I always said, choice grade A B for going to River Patrol. And so instead I enlisted and I ended up I went through boot camp down in San Diego. Then I got shipped up to Treasure Island in San Francisco. And luckily, out of I mentioned this before some of the people joined, out of 1,000 guys, 999 of them went to Vietnam. And I ended up getting detached from the US Navy and assigned to NATO. So I worked for a guy named Alexander Haig in his communications station. I had 2 levels above top secret. At that point, one of the levels you could not even tell other people the clearance that you had. And then I was sitting in a bar. I think you guys can appreciate this. I was sitting in a bar talking to this retired uh, female, um, and she says to me, I said I was assigned to NATO, and she looks at me and says, "Oh, did you have an atomal clearance?" And it was that was such a secret name that you couldn't repeat it to anybody. And I had to think about it for a bit. And then she says to me, she says, "That's no longer a classified term." And so I went and I researched it when I was talking to her. And sure enough, uh, it was called a TOML and was no longer classified. So you never know how you find your way through your life, right? All these mysterious things happen, and for whatever reason, they decided to declassify that term. So, um, and then I spent active from like 69 to 71 or something like that. And then I went back to the reserves for another like 3 or 4 years or whatever it was. So that's my history.
Uh, Thank you, Bob. Um, let's uh, let's uh, let's go to Winston here. Just if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your military background and what you're doing now.
Good afternoon, vets. How we're doing?
What? No, we're gonna do this. Gordon's gonna be our featured speaker here today, so we're just doing quick
Yeah,
introductions right now.
yeah. I'm Winston. I'm coming out of the gate. My first assignment was at Fort Riley, Kansas. I did 3 years there. Then I went to Germany. Did 7 years there. And then I transitioned because my job didn't pose any challenge to me any longer. So I decided to become a warrant officer. Um, I got it. I became a warrant, and my goal was to do 25 years and decide whether I want to do 30. Um, I made CW4 at 20 years. So I didn't like the way the Army was going at that point in time. So I went ahead and retired after 23 years.
And what
Um,
year was that?
uh,
What year did you
I,
retire?
re I retired in '07.
Okay.
February '07, right after my last deployment from OIF 3.
Got it.
Super. Thank you. And tell us just briefly what you're doing now.
Right now, I'm a financial advisor. I help people to be able to retire in dignity.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's hear from Tori. Here. There we go.
My name is Tori Seals. I'm actually not a veteran. However, I am the surviving spouse of a veteran. He was Sergeant Jay Seals. He was Army from 2008 to 2018 when he passed away due to toxic exposure-related stomach cancer combined with military medical malpractice. They knew he had cancer for 4 years before they told him. So I am now a military community advocate. I go to DC as often as I can and walk the halls and remind our elected officials of their moral obligation to our veteran community.
Thank you so much, Tori.
That
Very
is
good.
so nice.
Thank you
That
for
is so nice. Thank you.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just got a little pissed off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It motivated you.
You
Yes,
could,
I love
you
it.
could even been very majorly pissed off.
Yeah.
I was. When I found out that through searching through his records that a radiologist had said mass found, follow-up is needed, and then nothing happened. Even though he was hospitalized twice, it was just like, okay, I think it's time for me to go walk the halls and make some people aware.
Right. Right. Well, I appreciate that. And you and I need to connect up again. I know we spoke months ago, actually, and we need to be following up to tell his story. So thank you so much. Let's hear from Roy.
Hi, Roy Dickin. I didn't serve. My father was in World War II. He was a medic. And the reason that I like being in this group is because I'm doing digital marketing for Military Benefit Associates is the name of the group, and they legislate for. They push legislation for military benefits, and they also are very interested in financial benefits possible for all military families. So that's why I'm here, and I invited the gentleman that I'm doing the digital marketing for the Military Benefits Association, but he couldn't make it today unless he makes it later in the program here, but he will. And
Right.
I'll be bringing somebody else on to join our group.
Appreciate that. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Roy. Michael, let's hear from you.
Yes, I was invited by Moshe. Thank you, Moshe, for the invitation. I'm a veteran of the United States Marine Corps, and I'm a digital freelancer. I served between 85 and 91. I started out as an 0311, we call that grunt, but I learned that I had a gift for boxing, so there was no time to be a grunt and a boxer. So my amazing staff sergeant sent me to special services, and I became a military police, and spent my time between boxing and being a military police officer, and that was a great experience. And today, what I do is I mentor veterans on how to transition from being in the military to being an entrepreneur or trying to help them find direction. So I always tell people, remember Devil Dog Marketplace. We accomplish your mission with military precision.
Excellent. Ooh, thank you. Let's go to Santa Papa John.
Trying to multitask here at the same time and it's not working. I got a grandson that's graduating motorcycle school in Phoenix, Arizona that's on right now. highest in his class. That's pretty awesome. So
That's cool.
I'm Santa Papa John, folks, and I make people smile. No, I'm not a veteran, but I went home 2 weeks ago and talked to Dad and found out Grandma's 3 brothers are all veterans that were veterans. So that just adds some more stuff to me. Why is this not? Sorry, guys. I've never done Teams before, and it's not cooperating.
Well, I know that Santa Papa John is doing some things trying to put together a resource to help veterans across the country connect with the help and support that they need. So please put that link in the chat for others, and we'll hopefully everybody can visit that and assist. Moshe, let's go ahead.
I have one question for Santa Papa John.
Yes.
You said he's top in his class for motorcycle school. Does that mean is part of the curriculum Pata Papa Wheelie?
This is
you always say
best
something
motorcycle engine school in North America, and for him to graduate being top in the class, that's quite the honor.
And seriously, congratulations! It must be a pleasure for you
So
to
yes,
see.
I'll put the link in, Dennis. Thank you for saying that for me.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'll be brief. Michael unfortunately has heard this numerous times, so you have my sympathy in advance, Michael. My name is Moshe Math. I'm a partner in a company called Neuroentrained Sciences. Our top-end model looks similar to the massage chairs at the airport, but our system uses sound, light, and vibration and sonic massage to take your mind and body through a voyage. Our most popular sound session is relaxation through brainwave entrainment. So there are enough people here my age or approximately that. So I'll use a different example, especially for Dennis and Bob and Michael and Roy's. When your copy machine, the old copy machines we used to have, when they broke down and didn't tell you what the problem, when they told you what the problem was, paper stuck, whatever, you knew what to do. When it broke down and didn't tell you what was going on, what'd you do? You kicked it so that you felt better. and then you turned it off and on and hope it forgot whatever the problem was causing it to stop working. And that's what we're doing with the brain. The relaxation one is our most popular one, but not by far, not even close to our only one. And that's what our system does. In terms of businesses for me, I mentioned this before, I'm really thrilled. By accident, I know my wife expects a commission out of it. She deserves it. I met someone who works over at the VA hospital. So I'm hoping we're going to be able to do some research through that VA hospital. And my friend's is trying to get me involved so that research that he's doing for his dissertation will be our system in various ways.
Excellent.
Very good.
Thank you,
So thank you.
John Pleasance, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I just left a McDonald's at Fort Liberty in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
All right.
So I apologize for being 10 minutes late.
Is that the one that Clinton went to and they thought he was Biden?
I am very appropriately non-political in everything I do around the military.
I'm just talking about McDonald's. I wasn't referring to politics here. I'm sorry.
No, that McDonald's has been a great advocate for hosting military events and appreciation days. So a little bit about what I do is I started about 7 years ago helping a friend of mine do workshops with my digital whiteboards with Sharp. And it was so successful, they said, you need to get your license. So I've been working in the federal employee space, post offices, VA hospitals for about 7 years. But then as it turns out, federal benefits has a lot to do with the military also. And unfortunately, the left-hand side of federal benefits doesn't talk to the right-hand side of military benefits, even though they're both federal jobs. And so I hooked up with Military Benefits Association. It's about a 70-year-old nonprofit, and we lobby for better pay and certain things such as being able to pass on maybe educational benefits to the kids of soldiers killed in action, and things like the mortgage capability to be shared with the family, because if you're in the military, it's a family thing. It's not just the soldier. And so like I said, it's about a 70-year-old organization. We're totally nonprofit. Our goal is to get back out of the $450 million of benefits that go unpaid that unfortunately federal employees, including doctors and nurses and colonels and E1s and generals don't know about. Our aim is to get back 40% of the benefits that you guys should be getting. And so being an old organization, we've always done that either through briefings or one-to-one visits. And so with Roy Dickin, he's helping me share the fact that, a lot of the younger military is basically all their information is coming from their phone. I mean, it's just how it is. And so I appreciate y'all joining in. I'll be glad to share the organization. It's absolutely free of charge.
Super.
And our goal is to make sure you're getting back the benefits you're supposed to get.
May I
And
ask,
that's pretty
may I ask a
much what
question related to that? And maybe that's more work for you and Mr. Dickens. But on a serious note, are you going after or reaching out to family members through estates of people who served in the military who may not distribute to their heirs?
if they join, that can be the issue. We don't. When you say go after,
Well, when I say go, I didn't mean that in an SD way. I meant in essence monies that these people may have been entitled to, but didn't receive it and may not have even known about it and have now left this world for beyond. But maybe their families still do that.
absolutely, we have a sponsorship for the spouse and the family member. One of our benefits, if you join, includes free legal, not only for active military, but some of the things that you just mentioned have to be done through an attorney. It can be a $2,000 job. And so I'm not licensed to help the estate, but I can help them join the MBA, which would put them in touch with a attorney that's familiar with military benefits, because some of these are simply as easy as filling out a form. All right. That's what I love. Some are, as you know, much more complicated. And so we know that. And so we have a team of attorneys. So let's say someone joins and again, you can do a free membership, but basically between $30 and $40 a month, you get a lot of benefits. And one of the strongest benefits is the fact you can access with no minimum, no deductible, really qualified attorneys at no charge.
Oh, no charge. Because
that could be otherwise $30,000 to $40,000 in legal fees.
That's different than Legal Shield. I thought you were starting. You're starting to sound more like someone from Legal Shield, but no, if they're doing it for free, then that's a different story.
And I was a member of Legal Shield and I used it, but there are limitations after that first hour when you
yes, there are.
And when it comes to estate and wills, and I mean, it's all covered. It's aware of it. That's why Roy is in the right file folder, and almost to a T, everyone says, I mean to get around to do that. And so a retainer is a pretty strong reason. You're not going to get a professional attorney to help you. Right. But if you want to set up a adoption, you want to set up anything from a ticket to having your set up which my CPA is trying to get me to do, setting up trust. All that's no charge.
Well, excellent. We need to get on to our featured speaker. Thank you, John. Thank you for joining us. I look forward to information and website in the chat so we can save and share that. Very briefly, for those that have not met me before, my name is Dennis Schroeder. I served as a medical service corps officer in the Army for totally run a nonprofit organization here to follow up on. And this is actually an extension of that because we believe that veterans' stories are important and they need to be told. On LinkedIn with a young woman who said, well, she thought her story wasn't important because she didn't really do anything interesting or exciting. And I basically said, hey, that I understand that feeling and that thought process because I had that about myself. But I have being told and worth being heard. And so without further ado, I want to thank Gordon Sumner for joining us today. And Gordon, we're going to set or so to hear your story. And Mahedi, would you please make certain that Gordon has the ability to share his screen if he chooses to.
Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate it. And hello to everybody. Happy almost Turkey Day. It's just right around the corner. I don't know what your plans are, but Miss Vicki and I like to go to our American Legion post here in Springfield, Virginia, post 170 day luncheon to everybody. Last year, we were somewhere around 300 meals to veterans and their families. So it's a lot of fun. I mean, if you can imagine trying to cook 14 turkeys in a post, but we had grilled turkeys, we had fried turkeys, and we had roasted turkeys. So just any way you might want to have them, plus ham and everything else. So I wish everybody a very happy as well as received. And I don't really know where to start, except that I was born in Georgia and my dad was in the middle of a transfer. And so she decided to go stay with her parents and have the baby. And that started my moving around career days. But I grew up around different places and then ended up in high school in Alabama, went to Jacksonville State and Auburn University. And while I was getting started back around 1970, I ended up with a low draft number. I think somebody mentioned. So coming from a very small county in Alabama, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that there's not that many people to fill in the quotas, the university's ROTC simultaneous member program. So I got a chance to play third lieutenant on the weekends with the Army Reserve Unit, then still take advantage of the ROTC program and my $50 a month stipend, which was a lot of money back in 1971. And also that really helped. And then I thought, if I'm going to go overseas, I'm going to go on my terms, not the Army's terms. So I stayed in long enough to get a commission and then started off as an infantryman, served with a couple of in 75th Rangers for the early 70s under then Lieutenant Colonel K.C. Lure, who later retired Lieutenant General. So it was really a lot of fun. But I got married in 78 and decided that I really didn't want to look like a 85-year-old lieutenant colonel commanding a battalion like my current guy, Joe Strahan, looked like. So it all started, we were actually on an RTEP. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's an exercise you go on that lasts about a week. And we were sitting out there and it was December. I'm in the same rucksack, being as miserable. He was just making a little bit more money being a lieutenant colonel compared to me being a lieutenant. So that's when I had that come to Jesus meeting and saying, do I really want to look like that? And another, I said, I got married and my first sergeant, who at the time was a guy named Julius Gates, who later one day and said, Dawi, you're a dumb. And I said, divorce rate in this battalion. Did you not know that? I said, no, we've talked, just shook his head and walked off. So I put the two together and decided I was going to resign school at Florida State, where my grandmother Sumner had been one of the first females to go to that institution back in the very early 1900s when it was Florida. So I put my paperwork in. About 6:30 on a Saturday morning, a couple of weeks later, the phone rings at our quarters at Fort Stewart. And I answer the phone, Lieutenant Sumner, and I hear this. Oh, he goes, what the hell are you doing, Lieutenant? And I said, Captain Duckworth. He says, mate, Saturday, I'll call you whatever you want. I'll call you General Duckworth if it makes you feel any better. I said, what's going on? He came into his office there at the Milperson headquarters, Military Personnel Center, saw my folder while I was resigning my commission, and called me to say, hey, look, you wanted to go to flight school. And I said, yeah, but we kicked all the pilots out after the war. And he said, yeah, we screwed that up, kicked out too many. So if you want to go to flight school, your class starts in 30 days. He says, so I'm cutting orders for you to go to Fort Rucker, Alabama. And he says, you're going to Rucker. So you have to get all this stuff done. You got to make sure you pass everything so that when you get to Rucker, you're going to be a flight student and not just a staffer because you couldn't pass the prerequisites. So I said, okay, I got that. And I always tell people that I'm the poster child for God works in strange and mysterious ways, because all of us have experiences, I'm sure, where you've had a few things that have happened just out of luck or out of coincidence or whatever you want to call it, that really turned things around for you, maybe helped with a career decision, something like that. Well, I can tell you, I have had many of those kind of examples. And this one is one that just cropped up as well. So I'm sitting there thinking, all right, so what am I going to do? Well, it just so happened that the executive officer of the battalion had just left to take over his aviation company in the 24th Infantry Division. He was an Army aviator and was doing his infantry time and now headed back to pick up his aviation career. And he lived down the street there in government quarters. So I could just walk down the road, knocked on the door, and said to him, hey, here's what's going on. And to make the story even more interesting, and so you got to be kidding me. The guy I was talking to was Dean Anderson, at the time Major. He, my sister, and his wife, Linda, they were high school classmates. So I grew up watching this guy play football at the high school when we were living in that part of Georgia while my sister was going to high school. So I'd known the Anderson family since I was a little bitty guy. So I knew him already. So we just crossed paths later in the uniform. So he told me that he would have everything ready to go on Monday and for me to show up at his office at Hunter Army Airfield. And he did. So I took the whole day, went through everything, passed all the stuff. So 30 days later to that phone call from Roger Duckworth, I started my aviation career. and stayed in the Army for another 22 years. So 22, 23 years, somewhere as that as an Army aviator. Had a chance to serve all over the country, all over the world in aviation assignments. I'm one of the few commissioned officers who got a chance to fly a lot. In fact, when I retired, somebody told me that I had the most operational hours, both peacetime hours and combat hours, that any commissioned officer had who was not an instructor pilot, somebody who was just at Fort Rucker flying 4 hour a day loops around the traffic pattern, logging up a bunch of hours. So I had somewhere close to 5,500 hours when I left. I was rated in every helicopter the Army had in inventory except for the Chinook when I retired in 98. And the reason I tell people I didn't qualify in the Chinook is I just didn't want to fly anything that could have a midair with itself. So I said, yeah, I'm not flying that. So I had a chance to fly with the 82nd Airborne Division. Those of you that can remember Operation Urgent Fury, if you saw Cobra helicopters in October of 1998 on the island of Grenada, where we went in to rescue the medical students and stuff, well, those Cobras were my command. I was a captain commanding B Troop 17th Air Cav at Fort Bragg, and had been in the unit about a month. And we went on mission cycle and deployed to Grenada. And so I was the commander down there for that. Came back, served on the staff, then got picked up for an assignment. Guy called me up and said, hey, you're having way too much fun at Fort Bragg, so it's time for you to move. So he said, you want to go to England and you want to go back to Germany? And I said, yeah, I would. He says, well, you have to interview for this job. So I said, all right, what is it? It's an exchange officer tour with the British Army Air Corps. I said, oh, that sounds exciting. So I drive up from my house at Fort Bragg, drive up to the Pentagon, get told by this colonel to have a seat. He gives me a couple of these big, large notebooks to read. He says, I'll come get you and we'll go see General. I said, okay, fine. So a few minutes later, he comes in, tells me the general's ready to see me, takes me in to see the desk ops at the time, the lieutenant general. And I knock on the door, do the proper military entrance, salute, report present as required or as requested. And the general looks up at me, returns my salute and says, Gordon, good to see you again. And I was like, who is this guy? Because I go, being a junior, I go by my middle name. So if I get a Lewis, dear Lewis, or anything like that, then I know you don't know me. But if I get called Gordon, then there's a good chance that you know me or you know a close friend who's making an introduction. So this general looks at me and goes, Gordon, good to see you again. So I'm sitting down waiting on him to finish up and come over. My Rolodex is spinning. And he comes and he sits down and he looks at me and says, so how, now this is 3 years after Grenada, 3 years. And he says, so how have you been after Grenada? And as soon as he said it, I went, oh my gosh. So what happened is one day, Admiral Metcalf, who was the commanding admiral for Operation Urgent Fury, visited my operations there on the island. And I gave him the full briefing and all this kind of stuff that you would expect to give. And he had 2 one-star generals with him, a Marine guy and an Army guy. And guess who the Army guy was? This 3-star sitting there, and I'm in his office. And he remembered me, he remembered Grenada, and he remembered that briefing. And the guy's name was Norman Schwarzkopf.
Oh, wow.
So I'm sitting there in General Stormin Norman's office, and he looks at me and he says, so, are you interested in this exchange tour with the British? And I said, yes, sir, I am. And he says, well, the job's yours then. And that was my interview. That was it. Job's yours. So I ended up leaving Fort Bragg. We moved to England. I went through flight training at the Middle Wallop at the Army Air Corps Center. Got qualified in the British Lynx attack helicopter and the Gazelle, the French Gazelle scout helicopter that the regiment used. I was then assigned to 4 Regiment and sent to Germany because 4 Regiment was now the centerpiece of the British Army and the British Army on the Rhine. They were the aviation regiment along the East-West German border. So I said, okay, this is great. So I'm kind of filling in. Then I end up getting promoted. So now I'm mismatched between the job that I was going for to now my higher rank of major. And I went in to see the regimental commander, David Cranston, at the time Colonel, now retired Major General Sir David Cranston. And I told him the circumstances that I was having and how the Army doesn't like mismatch people. If you're in whatever rank, you need to be in that equivalent job. So I said, so let me float something by you. We have in the aviation an operations officer at the regimental level. Here's some of the things that that position does. You don't have one. Your stuff like that is actually run by your second in command, and I told the colonel, I said, who you and I both know doesn't like to go to the field and get his hands dirty. Or I'm for the field. I'm for writing war plans. I'm for helicopter standardization training. I'm for all this stuff. So if I could do that, I can justify staying with you because I didn't really want to leave that great tour. So he bought it. He called up and said, yeah, let's just go for it. So I became the first operational regimental operations officer in the British Army Air Corps and did all those things, rewrote doctrine. A friend of mine rewrote the anti-tank helicopter doctrine for the British Army Air Corps on the Rhine. And it was great. So about a year and a half into this, I get a call to come see the commander, regimental commander. So I walk over to the hangar and I walk in and he tells me that the British officer who had been selected to command one of the squadrons, 659 squadrons, had been injured in a motorcycle accident. And he had decided not to replace him with a British officer, but he wanted me to command the British squadron and had it approved by Sir Martin Farndale, the 4-star in charge of British Land Forces, as well as General Schwarzkopf. So Monday, the next week, I became the first American to command a British attack helicopter squadron, 659 squadron. And we had half of the front on the east-west German border to protect. And I changed the whole thing around. When I got the squadron, we had about a 19% officer operational readiness rate. Guys would ducking out of flying missions because they'd rather be at the club. So that mentality changed literally overnight. I started having flight crews from sunup to sundown on the border. I had the weather guys coming out of their office to have to give weather briefings to the flight crews in our headquarters, not theirs. And so the whole operations changed. When I left command a year and a half later, we were actually recognized as the top flying squadron in all of the British Army Air Corps worldwide. We won the Rolls-Royce Trophy that year. And so it was great. As it turned out, the next year, I was awarded the member of the most excellent order of the British Empire Medal by Queen Elizabeth. So there's 5 degrees of knighthood, and I'm at the bottom, the 5th one. But it's a really pretty medal, and if I do fly British Airways, I get to fly first class. But that's about the extent of what it does for me, except looks good in the trophy case. But I'm very honored to do that. So I continue on with my career, a couple of commands, battalion command in Hanau, Germany, acting brigade commander of 4th Brigade, 3rd Armored Division for a while. Came back to the States, did some other staff assignments, no more flying assignments. And then my last job is I was in the general officer billet there in the Pentagon. I was responsible for all of Army training worldwide. So I had a great career. Wasn't really looking at retiring at the time. My daughter was in high school. She was a junior. And I promised her that when she got to high school, especially those last 2 years, I wanted to be with her. I wanted to be a band dad. I wanted to, I'm thinking, well, what I'll do is I'll just retire because they were talking about moving me to California. And I said, I'm not doing that. So I retired, went to work with a minority owned small business. And the owner told me that his plan was to have the business for about 15 years or so. Then he's going to sell it. And those of us that were helping to build it from the beginning, we could share in the profit. So I said, yeah, that's fine. I was not expecting to be in the DC area much past about 3 more years, thinking that my daughter, I knew Andy was going to go to Auburn University. I mean, that's kind of what we do in the family. So I knew she was going to go down there. So I wanted her to have at least a year to get settled. And then we'd probably pack up and move back towards the South. And then, as they say, the good news is the company grew, and the bad news is the company grew. because in a minority business, we had grown so much and so fast into the millions of dollars of federal contracts that we couldn't even compete on our own contracts during the recompete period because we were no longer a small minority owned business. So he sold the company in 5 years, and he did exactly what he said he's going to do. He with the front load of us, he shared some of the profits, which was very nice. He didn't have to do that. That was all his money. He just had to pay me a salary, which he did. So I got out. I'm sitting there thinking, what am I going to do? And I get a phone call from President Bush's transition team that they wanted to talk to me about a job. And so I show up at their little office there in the Pentagon, and it really was a closet. I mean, you got to think of the Pentagon and all these spacey offices that you see on TV. Nah, that's only about 1% of them. The other 99% are literally they look like closets sometimes. And so I walked in and I met the transition guy, Craig During, who was a retired Air Force colonel. And he looked at my resume, he looked back at me, looked at the resume, looked back at me. And about the third time he did that, I went, oh, I got it. You're not looking for me. And had been in retired lieutenant general, my military dad. He had worked a lot in the diplomacy side of the house, ambassador role for South America, task force, Bravo, those kind of things. So he said, well, you do look kind of young to be a retired 3-star, but that's okay. And I said, well, that's all right. It happens all the time. And I started to walk out. He says, well, wait a minute. You're here. You got a nice resume. Let's talk. And so a few months later, I get a call to go interview with the guy who I call the assignments officer for the White House in the Pentagon. And so I go see Jim O'Byrne. And when I greet him, I got 30 minutes. That's all. They cut it. They'll have somebody come in and grab you and take you out because they got so many things going on. So I meet Mr. Burns. We walk into his office, and he looks at me and he says, so I understand you were in the 82nd Airborne Division. I said, yes, sir, I sure was. I got a couple of tours there. And he says, well, I was in the 82nd. And for the next 29 minutes, he shared all of his airborne stories, or a bunch of them. And at the end of 29 minutes, he looked at me and says, is there anything that you'd like to add? And I went, no, I'm good. And he says, well, we'll have a job for you. That was my interview to work in the Bush administration, which I did at the deputy assistant secretary level. Then when the election came in, my big boss, Secretary Gates, realized that we were a country at war and having a presidential election, we're going to have a new administration. That was the first time in 40 years that had ever happened. And for those of you who are familiar with how the government works at election time, all the appointees, they all provide their letters of resignation and they leave. And then you go through the confirmation process, which takes months. So you have this stagnation period because the government folks who are still there, they don't really want to make a decision because they know somebody's going to come in over the top of them and maybe change things or whatever. So you've got this tremendous amount of stagnation. And Secretary Gates realized that. So he went to both parties and said, look, I'll stay on as the SecDef. And then once whoever gets elected, that's fine. I'll work with the new administration until we can get things settled. But at least we'll have decision makers for those that are out in combat right now. And both parties said that's great. And so he picked about 10% of us to stay on. And I was fortunate enough to stay in my job in the Pentagon, in the Department of Defense, and continue working at that level till sometime after that. So I was really fortunate. And then when I left, I just started my own consulting business. I do consulting work for nonprofits. And one of them I helped start about 15 years ago was one called Veterans Moving Forward. The goal of that nonprofit was to provide service dogs to veterans that are dealing with mental or physical challenges at absolutely no cost to the veteran and their family. Because what was happening at about that time, there were nonprofits providing service dogs, but a lot of them had little caveats. So you could go to one and say, I'd like a service dog. And they say, well, are you a Marine? You say, no, I'm an Army officer, or I'm an Army soldier. Well, nope, they only go to Marines. Or I could go in and say, well, I'd like a service dog. Well, you're too old. You're Vietnam, Grenada, Desert Storm veteran. We're only giving dogs to Afghan or Iraq veterans. Things like that. So this organization was no caveat. All you had to do as a veteran was provide a documentation from your primary care provider that they support your effort to get a service dog and your DD-214 to show that you were honorably discharged. And that's it. Anywhere in the world, we could try, in the United States, rather, we'd try to get you a service dog. So I helped build that up, worked on the board for about 5 years, bowed out, started some more projects. And about 5 years ago, I got a call from the board asking if I'd come out of retirement. He thought I'd just gone away. If I'd come back and fix veterans moving forward. Well, I got in just before the COVID hit, not realizing what they meant by fixing it. So when I walked in the door, the two employees that were working there full time, they had already submitted letters of resignation. They were intending to walk out the back door. They had about a month and a half of operating funds in the bank. They hadn't placed a service dog in 4 years. And I'm thinking, wow. So I looked at the two employees. I said, look, give me 90 days, 3 months. If you don't like me, or you don't like the trashing we're going, or you don't like the strategy or whatever, and you want to leave, that's fine. I'll help write letters of recommendation. You're a team player. It just didn't work out. But let's give it a go. And I'm happy to say that when I retired last year, we had close to $1 million in the bank. We'd placed 14 service dogs across the country, 2 facility dogs, and about 42 comfort dogs. The group is building a new training center that's going to be state-of-the-art training center, with most of that work being donated to include the construction part. And so they're just doing very, very well. So today I'm back here just doing some small projects. So if you know of a nonprofit that could use my support, my team's effort, let them know. The other two things that I like to do is when companies or nonprofits, they're thinking about a strategy, time to redo their thought, their methods, their strategic plan. Most of them, what they'll do is the boss will say, hey, time for us to redo our strategy. I'm calling a meeting. And as soon as on what they want to go. And the other thing that I do is I like to facilitate these activities to the point that they walk out with an actual metrics-based strategic plan that they can monitor, and I can help monitor if they so choose with a follow-on contract. And the last thing I do is I like to come in if there's a large group or small group or nonprofit, they're in the middle of a search looking for that new president or new CEO. It's going to take them a while. The other person's already left. So instead of throwing that responsibility on some poor schmuck that's already working there, that's already got a to-do list that's up to here, I come in as an interim just to hold down the fort, keep everybody focused, keep the organization on track, making sure the mission's being accomplished, making sure the board of directors are informed on what's going on until they find that new person, with the agreement that I have no desire to come back and work full time for any long stretch of time. So if you know anybody that could use that, please let me know. I've put my contact information in the chat so you have my email. Last but not least, before I turn it over, I do have a couple of things that if you're interested in knowing about. One of the nonprofits that I work hard with is called Chapter 353 of the Military Order of the Purple Heart. So MOPH comprises of those of us who were wounded in combat and are recipients of the Purple Heart Medal. Many of you will be looking to buy our sponsor wreaths with Wreaths Across America.
But second of all, I'm also hoping that Dr. Gordon, that you'll include the different charities as you've mentioned now during your talk, so that way we can look at them. I know in my case it'll probably be more like I'm looking at most of them for next year, but I definitely want to know about it so I can look more into it and possibly be able to do things. I also have a question that may come across as being a wise ass. So let me apologize in advance for that. You said you stopped flying. I don't know how many years ago it was, but I remember seeing the late, I don't know what his rank was, Colonel Chick Yeager, who
Yeah.
talked about that they used to have an age restriction for flying after a while. They kept raising it, but I don't know, was the reason you stopped flying was because you're forced to due to the mandatory age, or your situation had changed and that's why you weren't flying anymore?
Yeah, the reason I stopped flying while I was still in active duty was that once you make lieutenant colonel or colonel, and not to mention general, is that your aviation assignments. I mean, there are only like a handful of colonel position brigade commanders that are aviation related, so they can act. So I maintained my flight status. I was still a qualified aviator drawing aviation flight pay, but there was nothing. There was no assignment for me to actually do it. So, and I always tell people, the Army said, all right, Gordon, you've had way too much fun. And so, we're going to have to punish you for having so much fun. So there's your office and there's your desk, and welcome to being a staff
Oh,
officer.
God. Unreal.
Okay.
Unreal.
Gordon, thank you so
I-
much. I really do appreciate you coming on board. We had the opportunity to talk some months ago, I think it was, and I just knew that everybody here was going to be blessed by your story. I know I was here
Yep.
as well. I'd like to open this up. I saw Tori was waving her arms earlier when you were talking about working with nonprofits. Tori, I want to give you the opportunity to chime in here, ask a question or a comment.
Okay, well, I'm I'm trying to create a nonprofit that will allow me to go walk the halls of DC, because right now I'm doing it all out of pocket. Um, every penny I have goes towards survival and sending letters, emails, phone calls, and walking the halls of DC all on my own. And to be honest, part of that is because I want to be able to be free to speak my mind and speak what needs to be spoken to, because too many of the nonprofits that I have worked with and volunteered with, they're receiving money from the VA, so they can't speak up against the VA. Or they are receiving money from the DoD, so they can't speak up against the DoD. So in order not to be beholden to the DoD or the VA, and to be able to be free to, nope, you guys screwed this up and this is where you got to fix it. Because I don't ever walk in someplace with a problem without having at least one optional solution. But
We get
being
it.
being able to say, yes, you screwed this up, you gotta fix it, and not be beholden to them to continue my funding.
Tori, do me
So
a favor.
yes, dear.
I invited you to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yep, I already said okay.
Oh, good. Okay. And then the other question I have, not directed to you, there's a gentleman named John Pleasance. Did we hear
Yes,
from him?
he's on here.
I know. Did anybody hear from him? Did he speak?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't even know that. I was looking
Good.
for him on LinkedIn and I couldn't find him.
I'm
So,
here, but I'm driving.
oh, gotcha. Gotcha.
So
Are you on LinkedIn?
give Roy
John?
whatever you need, and I'll be in touch.
John, are you on LinkedIn?
Roy's updating my LinkedIn. That's one of the things I need to get done. But yes,
If I
I'm
put
on
him there,
there.
he's on there, Bob.
Okay. So
I'm his digital marketing guy.
maybe I'll work through you to get
Yeah,
the John Pleasance LinkedIn,
Yes.
because I couldn't find it.
Yeah, that would be the way to do it.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, gang. So we got 5 minutes left. Does anybody have any final thoughts?
I did put my contact information again, my cell phone number. I
Great.
put the link to Bridle Paths, and I also put the little message about Purple Heart chapter that has the link embedded to order your wreaths, and you can just cut and paste that notice
Great.
and send it out.
Well, there's a little picture of mycity.com That's the head of my social media. His name is Mehedi. What he does is he records the meeting. And then if you have an email address in this, then what we'll do is we will email you the recording. So you have it there at your disposal. Okay?
Okay.
Super. Well, I just added my contact info there for those of you who may not have it. I thought this today was a great meeting. Thank you so much for everybody who showed up. I know folks had to drop off early, but I don't know if we're meeting next Friday or not. With after Thanksgiving, I'll probably come on here. We'll probably just have a chat rather than have a story
Yeah,
time.
I agree. That kind of came out of our meeting this morning, right?
I said this earlier. I will be here next week, but my point is, whoever comes next week gets longer time to give their presentation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yes.
Guys, Moshe, you are always funny. And John, do me a favor. Can you text me, or I guess I can get your LinkedIn information through Roy.
Yeah, you can get anything from me, Bob.
Yep.
We've been working together too long.
No, he's bringing me up to speed. That's why.
I'll get him there.
Right.
I love it. I love it. Good
Thank
group.
you all.
Good group. We are
I'm gonna have to
accomplishing.
be leaving myself here very shortly. I'm got the
Yeah.
white shirt on. I got a jacket. My wife and I are going to go have photos taken for Christmas cards to be sent out.
All right.
Oh, very good.
Congrats.
Well done.
All right.
All
Y'all
right.
have
I'm
a
gonna be signing us
wonderful
all off.
Thanksgiving.
Yes. Happy Thanksgiving
Yep.
to everybody. God
Great
bless.
meeting. Thanks,
Well,
everybody.
thanks.
Talk
Thanks
to
for
you all
having
later.
me.
Same to you.
Appreciate it.
Don't stop yet,
Okay.
Bob. Just finish up. I'm doing a copy and paste of the chat. I apologize.
You getting it?
I am slowly, unfortunately. I'm almost done. Damn
Okay.
it! Oh crap! I'm sorry. I did a copy and paste, and it didn't pick up. It picked up what I did previously.
Oh,
Thank you for your patience during my technological incompetence.
you seem to fare through this pretty well. All right,
Gordon,
Winston, great to see you
presentation
again.
today. Thank
Santa,
Yes, sir. Same here.
and Gordon, thank you for your service, and thank you for all your words of wisdom.
I'd do it all over again.
Well, we might have you.
Okay. Sounds good. Bye, everybody. Happy
Okay, happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Merry
everyone.
Thanksgiving.
Take care, all. Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye now.